MJ, are we recording?
We're live. Yeah.
We're live.
Perfect. Welcome back to the Youth in Podcast, the podcast where we discuss political ideology, policies, current day events, and more. I'm your host, Elia and Ahmadi, and joining me as today's co-host is MJ Zadira. On today's episode, we'll be having a conversation with Pierre Wilson. Pierre Wilson is the National Director at Blexit America and host of the Blexit Breakdown Show. Mr. Wilson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate you all having me on.
So the first question I want to start with, do you believe systemic racism exists in the American criminal justice system?
Getting right into it. I like it. Personally, no, I don't. I think that there are factors that create an environment where minorities are locked up more often than others, but I think a lot of it is self-inflicted. I spend a lot of time in the communities, and I see a lot of choices that could be made differently. That could, number one, decrease the police presence in some of these communities. So, I mean, I think people are seeing the rate of minorities being locked up, and they're automatically saying, "Oh, there's some type of disparity, or there must be some type of unfairness or some horrible treatment towards us," when in reality, a lot of the decisions that are being made, play into why that's happening that we are not addressing.
And thus far, in the past 4 years, what has Trump accomplished for the Black community in America?
Where do I begin? I mean, you talk about, number one, HBCUs. I started at a HBCU. I ended up graduating from a different school, but I spent 2 years at an HBCU. I was actually voted class president at HBCU. I understand that those institutions, as good as anyone, they need help. And the Trump administration has given the most money to HBCUs in any administration in history. I mean, that's huge. And for those who understand HBCUs need, you know how big that is. And opportunity zones, while opportunity zones are for everyone, there was no secret that they were especially beneficial for those in urban areas in the Black communities who needed that boost, who needed to be able to rebuild their neighborhoods. And I think that was huge. I mean, we have criminal justice reform. That's another thing. I mean, that's huge. No president even really went near that or wanted to touch that because it was considered political suicide, for a lot of presidents to touch that, but yet he did. And you see now under that First Step Act, I think 75% of the people who have been released are Black. I mean, he's just done so much. He released the Platinum Plan for what he was hoping would be the second administration, which goes over so many different ways that we wanted to rebuild Black America. I mean, I think Trump has been one of the best presidents Black America has ever had, despite the fact that the media has framed him otherwise.
I guess going off of that point, I'd like to ask you, how do you respond to the criticism levied against Trump with regards to the opportunity zones, especially looking at the fact that some of these zones were put into areas like Hollywood and Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, and beyond that point, when it was put into Black communities, it led to gentrification, and some accused Trump of being cronyist in nature for that. So how would you respond to those allegations?
Well, the reality is the opportunity zones, and that's why I mentioned in my point, it's for everyone, right? It wasn't just for one particular community, but it was something that could benefit that community. I think the real issue at hand is that a lot of minorities were not educated. If I could fault where it may have went wrong, is that maybe we didn't spend enough time educating minorities on how to take advantage of that. So then you saw other people come in and do that, right? It wasn't that it wasn't there; it was available for any and everyone. It was an opportunity for us to be able to take back our neighborhoods and rebuild them in the way that we saw fit. But a lot of people didn't take advantage of that. And part of it, I'm going to be honest, I blame a lot of the liberal left, because even though the president was a Republican, you have to think these Black areas are still run by Democratic mayors, Democratic city councils. The Dems run any majority Black city you name, the Dems run it, right? There was no promotion about these things. There was no resource. There was no information session on how to take advantage of these things. There was no type of promotion of it because of who it came from. It came from a president that didn't like, they didn't want him to have a win. They didn't want him to be seen as doing anything for Black America. So I think it's more about the fact that politicians failed us on really explaining how to take advantage of opportunity zones, and then those who had the resources already to learn, they did, and they took advantage of it. So,
But I'd question the idea of how much education could impact somebody, especially when we're looking at opportunity zones that, realistically speaking, I mean, the only benefit that comes from investing into these communities with this much liquidity and this much assets is a 10% cut on capital gains taxes. If you're a black if you're a black family or a black business owner in a black community, capital gains tax won't affect you. So I really do question how much of an effect could education really have?
I mean, I think it's not. It's about. It's so much bigger to me than just like the numbers of it. It's about the fact that you're talking about people who came into our community and who took advantage of that, right? Like, for me, it's about the black people being able to own their own neighborhoods, to be able to control what happens in their own neighborhoods, to be able to benefit from what happens from the businesses in their neighborhoods. It's a starting point. It's not an end of a line solution, right? I mean, you're not going to fix all the problems in one administration. But at the same time, I disagree with the education component, because a lot of people didn't even know what that was. So to say, how can someone take advantage of something that they didn't even know what it was, or it was never explained to them, or they didn't understand? I mean, that's tough. You have to be able to understand what it can even do for you before you can even make a decision on if it's something you want to try to go after. If you shield that information, if that information is not put out there, I mean, we have welfare offices everywhere. We have information on stuff that keeps us dependent. I mean, why don't we spend the same type of time and resources to put information out about things that could help us grow? Again, is it an end-all solution? Would it have changed everything in Black America? No, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it would have, but I know it would have been a great first step for many.
100%. And speaking of first step, I'd like to ask about the First Step Act. You brought it up as one of the accomplishments of Trump, but what about the underfunding that Trump offered towards that act? How do you respond to those sort of criticisms, especially with regards to the fact that Trump's budget, if I'm not mistaken, underfunded it and cut its funding by about 86%?
For the First Step Act?
Yeah. Trump's budget response in, I think, 2020, if I'm not mistaken, funded it by about 17 million. Again, I can check these
Yeah.
numbers again, but
Yeah.
I just want to wonder, again, by the way, I am black, so I want to
No, tough questions.
yeah. It's just I'm just asking here because I guess I'm more left leaning, right?
Mhm.
I'm a left leaning black individual. You're a right leaning black individual, and I just want to ask, and I want to hear your point of view on this, And I've heard right-leaning black individuals bring up, say, the First Step Act and say it. And then I'm like, yeah, I agree with Trump on the First Step Act. But if Trump agrees with Trump on the First Step Act, why did he fail to fund it?
I mean, I look at it from a different standpoint, and yeah, I agree. Funding is obviously always going to be a fight between the right and the left. I mean, being a conservative is also being fiscally responsible. In my opinion, I think that is something that we probably actually lacked a little bit the last couple of years. But I'll be honest. Look, I'm a fair critic of both sides. I'll criticize my side as well. But no, I think the biggest thing, I would challenge you to look at the First Step Back from a number standpoint of people who got released. So the whole point of that program and what we were advocating for, I was luckily one of the people that were able to help advocate for it, was to kind of reward those who were in prison, that or release those, I should say, who were in prison, who maybe made a mistake for whatever it may be. I mean, some people have been doing the ultimate community service in prison. They were outstanding inmates. They were respectful to guards, and these people were still serving the same amount of time, getting a lot of the same treatment that a lot of other inmates were getting. Now you're seeing a lot of people being released, and if you look at the facts on who, what race they are, what background they are, over 75% of these people that are being released are Black Americans. So this directly impacted us. Whether, again, this is another policy that was for everybody. It wasn't just for Black people, right? But you see who has benefited from it the most, who's got released from it the most, which I feel like a lot of people didn't even touch. A lot of presidents wouldn't even touch it.
Oh,
They wouldn't near
hey, man,
anything that was releasing.
I'll clarify this for a second. Even though I'm left leaning, I just believe I don't support previous presidents, especially with regards to how they impacted the black community. But I just believe Trump is a continuation of that. But I just want to ask, if you said 75% of black people, 75% of the people that were released were black. If we increase funding, wouldn't we have more people released, thus more black people released? So the question I'm posing here is, how can we? What's like? How do you reconcile that issue that you have with Trump?
Yeah. So no, I actually agree with you there. I mean, in a perfect world, I think we would fund it better, because I don't know if you guys have heard of, it's a piece in that legislation that we refer to as the second setback, right? Which is basically you start to try to get people back into the work environment. I mean, we even when there's even small pieces in there for funding to be able to get to work, whether you were using get to a job interview, whether you were using an Uber or some type of public transportation, to be able to refund those things for you. So that, I think, is the biggest impact of that was probably the biggest impact of not funding it enough. Was not being able to help reintegrate these people back into society, because it didn't cost as much to necessarily release them, but it hurt us to not be able to help them become productive members, which was the goal of the First Step Back, is to make sure they didn't return too, right? There's no point in releasing them just for them to return. So I agree. I mean, I think if we funded it more, we probably would have saw a higher success rate. We would have saw less people turn around and go back as well. But that's just one of those things where, no president's perfect. I'm not going to tell you Trump is perfect. I'm not going to tell you his administration made every decision correctly. I saw an outsider with Trump. I'll be the first to tell you, there's a lot of things that Trump says and does sometimes, and I'm like, no, like, please stop, don't do that. But I did see someone, in my opinion, everybody has their opinion, who was trying to take some steps that hadn't really been taken by a lot of previous presidents.
Again, I actually want to thank you again, because like this has been, like, right now, as so far we've only been 12 minutes in, but this has been an incredible discussion, and we've really like even though me and you both have different sides of the thing, sides of like the same coin almost, we both want to impact our communities the most, and we both are black, and we both want to fix our communities.
This is what you're saying is exactly what I want and I pray for the political environment. Being a conservative does not mean that I am gung-ho Republicans are right about everything, right? And I understand the left, but many of my friends are still liberals, right? I have a mixture, and I know some conservatives who, they don't know any liberals, and it's tough, because I'm like, well, you don't know any liberals, it's hard to understand them. Same thing for liberals. If you don't know any conservatives, it's going to be really hard for you to understand them. So I think it's actually important to always have this dialogue, to always have these conversations, because most of the time, a lot of us are chasing the same thing. We just believe in two different ways in getting there, but we both want what's best for our community and America as a whole. So yeah,
which I agree with. Go ahead, Elia.
So on the topic of, wanting the best for our community as a whole, and of course, Black America, why do you think Joe Biden won't be a good president for Black America?
So listen, I actually don't dislike Joe Biden personally. I'll tell you this, I think he's a good guy from what I know. I think he is well-meaning, has good intentions. My issue with Biden administration is more of a policy one, right? Kind of what we're discussing right now. I think Joe Biden is more of the status quo, more of the same, more of the we've already been there, we've tried that type of thing. We're not going to see. I don't think we're going to see a change maker, someone who is going to bring about that. I mean, we just went through a summer of riots, and we want to flip the country, want to change the country, want to do this, we want to do that. And then we elected someone, in my opinion, who is exactly what we thought we were getting away from, which was the Washington elite, the career politicians who are great on the campaign trail, make a lot of promises, get in office, don't really act on them. I mean, I don't really see Biden doing anything different than what he's done his entire time. And my main issue, though, if I had to point out a big issue with Biden, is obviously the criminal justice, the criminal bill, the crime act. I'm sorry, talking about so much criminal bills and stuff right now. Yeah. That's a sore spot. I know some people are like, oh, it was in the 90s. I'm like, people are still in jail right now from that. Like, 90s, and people are still being impacted by that. Okay. And with Kamala Harris, that was my issue with her too. I think that when it suited her in California, she wore the badges as top cop, and she wore with honor, with pride. She had no problem being tough on crime. And even I read one of her cases, and she literally argued to keep prisoners in prison because of prison labor, because of the need for prison labor, regardless of whether they were doing a great job or not. She said the prison would lose their labor force. Okay, someone's dad, this is someone's mom. So I'm looking at it from a standpoint like, okay, Black America just threw a lot of support behind these two individuals that literally have a history of going against the very thing they just spent the summer yelling and fighting and, for real, burning down buildings about. I mean, I think I don't think it was a smart move, personally.
So because you say you wouldn't want to go back to the status quo of having someone like Biden who served under Obama, the HBCU funding act that you are really happy about was a program that was created under Obama's administration. So what is it exactly that you don't like about what you would call the status quo of Biden?
There's a big difference between what Trump and Obama did. The biggest difference is that every year, HBCU presidents from across the country would come to the White House and they would ask for funding. And then Trump tells this story all the time. They came back during one of his years, and he asked them, why do you guys keep coming back? And he, Trump being Trump, he's like, what makes you guys keep coming back? Is there a reason you guys have to come back every year? Like, what? He really didn't understand why this was happening. Well, they said, Mr. President, we have to come back because every year we need funding. I mean, there's no long-term funding. There's nothing like that set up for us. So what Trump did was he permanently funded them. So in addition to being the administration that funded them the most, he provided he advocated for and got legislation that permanently funds HBCUs. So for me, that is huge compared to what Obama did, because he did have the chance to do that as well. And he didn't. And I think, my personal opinion, right? I'm going to give an opinion on this part. I think President Obama, being the first Black president, I do think he stayed away from certain things because he didn't want to be seen as being stereotyped or thrown into a category or whatever. And I think he tried so hard to present himself as a president for all Americans, which he could have still done, but still also at the same time done more for Black America, because a huge part of his election was Black America. I mean, I think he got one of the highest vote totals ever from Black America, right? So I think it was a mistake on his behalf to try to tread so lightly around some of those issues. He had a chance, and he had a mandate, especially his first election. I mean, he comes in with a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House of Representatives. He had a strong mandate to really make change, and I think he didn't do as much as he could have, in my opinion.
So you said, Trump has some of the highest numbers among the Black community that we've seen in a long time. What made Joe Biden, a president who claims to be an ally of the Black community, less appealing to them than Trump was?
I do credit Trump and what he's done for Black. Okay, let me start here. This is what I always say, and I always tell this to my liberal friends. It's not about making you a conservative or making someone a liberal. It's none of that. I want you to be exactly who you are. I want you to have the facts, and I want you to research, and then I want you to decide which side do you line up on. If you do all the research and you say, you know what, I'm a liberal, okay. You make sure you're educated, make sure you know why you're doing what you're doing. No, in my opinion, no race, no group should be voting 85, 90% for one party. None. That you lose all your leverage, you lose all your power, you lose everything, which is why you see Democrats often take advantage of the Black vote. They get it, they do whatever they got to do during campaign season, they get it, and they get in office, and then they don't really care as much. Because at the end of the day, it's a shoo-in, it's a slam dunk. If you really want your voice to be heard, if you really want the power, you really have to start giving both sides a look. You have to look at both sides. If you're a Democrat, still look at the Republican side, see what they're saying in the debates. If you're a Republican, look at the Democratic side, see what they're saying. You really need to understand and treat yourself like a free agent. Okay. If I had to give advice to Black America right now, is be a free agent. Treat yourself somewhat like a free agent. Make both sides work for your vote. Okay. What Trump did, though, which was different than any conservative I've seen in a long time, was he made direct appeals to the black community. Republicans suck at that. Just like the Democrats know that they're going to get the vote, Republicans already know they're not. So they don't waste a lot of resources and a lot of money or time on trying to get the black vote. Trump did, and that's what I tell Black America all the time. I said he got 8% of your vote in 2016. Yet when he got in office, he still put in place policies and still spent time giving speeches and doing all these things. Black Voices for Trump for a group that only gave him 8%. He literally, in some people's mind, wasted resources. But Trump didn't see it like that. He saw it from a standpoint of, I want to be a president for you too. Even though you didn't support me, I want to be a president for you too. And that is what I think a lot of Black Americans saw, especially a lot of Black men, which you saw voted for him in higher numbers than.
But that's like, is it okay if I respectfully disagree and offer my opinion on this?
Yeah,
Beyond this point, as a Black American, I respectfully have to disagree on this point. Like the idea that we should somehow like choose parties that are different to us, that we don't agree with, right? That are harmful towards our ideologies, just to play politics is I don't believe like if Black communities are voting in record numbers for Democrats, there must be a reason behind it. And maybe the reason is that Democrats support organizations that are pro-Black, like BLM. They support ending criminal justice criminal justice programs. They support ending the fact that African Americans are 3.72 times more likely to be shot by police, 2.72 times more likely to be killed by police, that 1 out of 1,000 Black men will die at the hands of a police officer, right? Beyond that point, they support like marijuana legalization, marijuana decriminalization, all of these things. That's why the Democratic Party has Black support, not because Black people are some sort of monolithic, like non-thinking group. And I don't know, that's obviously not what you're trying to say, but like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to explain.
I definitely am not thinking that Black America.
Obviously.
Yeah, I'm trying to show Black America that you do not have to be, you don't have to be a Democrat. That I do 100% agree with. And now this is where you and I disagree. Everything that you're saying, they support BLM, they support all this stuff. I agree with you when it's election season. When they're in office, it's their policies that have caused a lot of things that they're writing about. If there's institutional racism, where is it happening? They control our communities. I mean, they control our police departments are most of the time these are Democratic, or in a lot of cases Democratic and Black police chiefs in some of these cities where we're having some of the worst police crime. And then somehow Republicans get blamed for it. And Republicans like, we haven't controlled anything in your city in decades. Okay, not a mayor's office, not a police, nothing in decades. And then when you look at BLM, I have a lot to say about them. I believe Black Lives Matter. I believe the organization does not. I'm going to tell you why. Where's the money going? Just recently, a couple of days ago, you had their chapters, 10 chapters, sign a legislation. I mean, not legislation, sign a document saying they don't receive funding from the global network. I've been calling this out for months. I oversee 30 chapters. I know what it's like to run chapters. I know what organizations are in the community. We partner with organizations on both sides of the aisle. Okay, left, right. We don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If it's about helping someone, we'll work with you. BLM is never there. All of a sudden, every election season, they pop up. They're getting all these donations, and then you're like, where is the money going? It's certainly not going to their chapters. So I do have a problem with organizations like BLM and the Democrats backing that, because it's really not helping Black America's cause. And I'm gonna share something else. If Democrats really care about the Black vote and not just Black people and not just the Black vote, why are we not doing more to help them get off of these government dependency programs? Instead of spreading welfare, making it easier for people to continue to get welfare, why don't we have more resume writing officer services set up so we can teach people how to write their resumes, more job training so we can teach people how to work when they get on the job, or more job interview training so we can even teach them how to do an interview? I mean, why are we not doing more to say, hey, we don't want you to depend on us forever. We want you to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. The policy of the Democrats, to me, keep people in the same space, and then they call it help. It's like, if I'm your friend, but I want to make sure that I'm doing better than you, so I'm giving you some and I'm helping you. I'm giving you a little bit of money, but not really enough for you to be able to learn how to make this money on your own. Well, that's how I feel the Democrats treat Black people. But if they start to teach Black people how to be on their own, they might not vote for them. I mean, let's just be real. When they start realizing that, wait a minute, I'm actually making money and taxes is hurting me. Maybe I need to not be voting for the Democrats. That could lose. I mean, you're seeing that now with this whole push for illegals. Democrats were never like that in the past. All of a sudden, illegals are gold to them. All of a sudden, you hear it's in their party platform. The reason why is because they do see a break a little bit in the black vote. It is a concern for them, and they want to make sure that they make up that group and where it matters, which is the vote. So, I mean, I don't think it's a lack of Republicans not caring. I will agree and say Republicans don't do a good job of making their case. But even like with school choice, that's something that would 100% benefit Black America. Democrats never want to talk about it. Never. So our Black students are continuing to go to these rundown schools, okay, getting horrible education, and the Democrats are recycling their same talking points of how we need to support teachers. No, we need school choice. We need to give the powers back to the parents so that we can be able to make decisions that's best for our kids, and that includes getting us out of a bad school so we can get the proper education.
Well, I agree with everything that you're saying, and you say like we should offer resume programs, welfare, or like not welfare programs, but like job training programs, like school choice, school incentive programs, all these different programs. These are social programs. Like when more radical liberal people like, for example, the Squad, Congressman McGovern, when they talk about defunding the police, these are the programs that they're talking about putting in place, right? You say it's all about depending, like when Black people realize that they don't have to depend on Democrats. I'd pose the exact same thing, except take out Democrats, put in police. When Black people realize that they don't have to depend on the police to secure their neighborhoods, and rather that we spend this money on raising Black voices, raising Black income, raising Black people, right? That's when the Black community is actually going to do incredibly well. And that's what defunding the police is all about. Is by moving, it's not really defunding, it's reallocating police funds towards better and more and more impactful options.
So I'm okay with reallocating funds. I think where we disagree is where we reallocate those funds. So I'm leaning more towards some of the programs like welfare and some of those things, and you're leaning more towards the funding of police. What I've been hearing from the Democrats is like, if there's a domestic violence dispute, how about have a counselor show up at your home and all this? And I'm sorry, no, no, I'm sorry. That's no, I think it sounds good in theory, and I get it. We want to believe the best in people, but no, and I think it actually hurt the Democrats. I'm going to be honest. You guys, you probably know this. There's an internal fight in your party right now. Even though Joe Biden won, there's a huge internal fight on the left on how bad did this hurt them, because election night, although Trump, it looks like Trump may have lost, the Republicans actually had a really good night. They flipped a lot of state legislators. They held a lot of state legislators. They took more seats in the House than Nancy Pelosi and the Squad thought was possible. They look like they may hold on to the Senate as long as the Republicans come out and vote like they should. I mean, the Republicans down ballot had a fantastic night outside of the presidential election. And even Trump did better than some people expected. And I don't think it's any secret why. I think defunding the police actually did hurt the Democrats a little, because I think there's a lot of Democrats who do not think that should happen too. I don't think that it's a Republican thing. But the programs that you were talking about, I don't look at it as just a social dependent program. This is like a teach you how to fish, not just give you fish. If you're going to a resume writer and you're learning how you're getting your resume done, you're getting that resume done so you can get a job. A job is going to support you, or is going to help you support yourself and your family. If we're teaching you and we're giving a little bit, we give you a free job training program or a job interview program. We're teaching you that so that you can again get that job and then depend on yourself. So sure, I'm okay with certain programs as long as the goal is not dependency. When you have this recycled thing where you got mom on welfare, daughter now has gone on welfare, grandbaby is now on welfare. It's like a generational thing. I mean, I literally have people who I know who welfare has just been going down their family line. You know, it's a problem. It's a problem. So I want programs that are going to lead to independency, not programs that are going to lead to continued dependency, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, on the welfare point, my economic stance fundamentally disagrees with the idea that welfare leads to dependencies, and we can get into like that if you want, because look, like saying welfare leads to dependencies assumes that people don't need the thing, first of all. Second of all, assumes that like there's a better option. And then third of all, like with regards to welfare actually increases economic growth in the long run by increasing consumption spending, right? And so overall, like welfare spending is actually really good for the economy and really good for people as well. Like here's the issue. If it wasn't for redlining policies passed by a racist America in the 1960s, we wouldn't need welfare. If it wasn't for the policies passed by not only redlining from the 60s, but modern day redlining in the forms of like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, if you're familiar with the fact that they each got sued for about 10 million each, right? It absolutely destroys, like if it wasn't for that, then we wouldn't need welfare. African Americans would have access to loans, would have access to resources. If it wasn't for the fact that African Americans are dying in their own community, we wouldn't need welfare. If it wasn't for the fact that African Americans are being incarcerated at such higher rates that they don't have fathers, that they become that they're stuck with their mothers, we wouldn't need welfare. Welfare is nothing more than a byproduct of the state. We need to reform the state in order to focus on reforming welfare. You want to get rid of welfare? It's not by cutting welfare benefits. It's not by Trump's cutting food stamps. It's by fixing the state that causes welfare to happen in the first place.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned too, and I'm not saying welfare needs to be completely gone. What I'm saying is people are taking advantage of the system, and it is creating a system of dependency that I stand by. There is you mentioned fathers. What does welfare do? Do you know one of the things they do when you're on welfare? They send someone around to make sure that the man, or if it's a man who's getting the welfare, that the woman is not in the home. It is literally creating government dependency. It is literally breaking up the family unit. When they send someone around to make sure that the second parent is not in the home, we have a problem. There should be no program that does that. There should be no program that allows that. That is insane. So you can't, in the same breath, argue welfare, but then also argue for a two-parent home when the policies that the left created are making this worse. And then I have welfare is one of those things where I did extensive research on it. My brother-in-law actually works for a welfare office. The amount of people who scam the welfare office, the amount of people who receive these benefits who should not be receiving these benefits, the people who sell their food stamps to other people. I mean, literally, it is a system that is not functioning properly. It is a system that is not being checked properly and not being managed properly. And I don't know that the Democrats care to manage it properly, except when they want to make sure that you don't have that man in the home. Like, it is not a good policy, in my opinion. If you want welfare to stay, it needs to be reformed in a way where it does not lead to more dependency. It's on them. It needs to be put in place where you have to meet certain criteria and you need to get off of it. And it needs to be enforced. There is no reason why people should be on welfare for years when we live in the greatest country on earth. Okay, there's opportunities everywhere around us. I didn't come from the best environment. I came from a single mother myself. I saw people get killed in front of me at the age of 7. I shouldn't be here today. My mom used welfare at one point. But you know what? When I stopped being a victim, when I stopped having that mentality that this is all life had for me, that this is what I needed because there weren't no resources because of the color of my skin, my life changed. I took responsibility. I'm not saying there's not bad officers. Same thing with defunding police. There absolutely are bad officers. There's a show on Netflix called Nurses Who Kill. Are we going to go riot in the streets for that? There's bad people in every profession. Yeah. We're never going to get rid of bad people, which means
here's the issue. Here's
in every profession. But we have to look at why are police in our communities in the first place? Okay, why are they there so much in the first place? What can we first do to change, to make sure that we are handling our problems the right way to hopefully decrease the amount of police presence, and then we can go from there.
Well, but again, like I'd argue that I think like here's the thing. You're right to an extent, but I think you're missing the point of how much of that quote unquote like like how much of like the things that you're saying we need to decrease are out of our control? Like, for example, you want to look at crime rates, right? How much of our crime rates can be attributed to the fact that the war on drugs was passed by Nixon, and that the by Nixon and Reagan, and that the impacts of the war on drugs continues to proliferate in the U.S. right now? How much of the crime rate can be attributed to the fact that Black Americans cannot access loans in order to build economic capital? How much of the crime rate can be attributed to the fact that Black Americans are unable to genuinely move themselves up the social ladder? Like, Black Americans as a whole, as a racial group, like especially with regards to lower income, are harder to move up. How much of that crime rate can be attributed to the failures of our inner city schools? How much of that crime rate can be attributed to like the failures of the government in actually providing the right things to African Americans? And yes, Pierre, I agree with you, by the way. I'm Black, and guess what? My dad's very successful. We came from a country like from Algeria, a country where in reality we had no chance of success. But guess what? When we say that our skin color just doesn't exist anymore, when we say that the issues that come with our skin color doesn't exist, it's not like it's some imaginary thing that goes away the second that we do it. Because here's the thing, Pierre, just because you say, right, here's the thing, Mr. Wilson, just because you say that the skin color doesn't exist, right, or that the issue that the issues that come with your skin color don't exist, like the idea that like the removing the victim complex, right, doesn't mean that you're still not the victim. It doesn't mean that you're still not going to be affected by the issues. It doesn't mean that if you were to walk into a bank right now, you're more likely to get a lower mortgage rate than a white person with your same economic situation. Doesn't mean that when you're walking down to the store, you're more likely to get stopped by a police officer just for wearing a hoodie, while the white person next to you won't.
So here's I think this is where we're disagreeing. I think it's a perspective of where you're looking at it. I think you're looking at it from a standpoint of what is stacked against us. I'm looking at it from a standpoint of what can we do about our circumstances. I'm from the school of self-accountability. That's just how I am. Before I look at anyone else, I'm going to look at myself. I'm going to see what I can do. What can I change? What can I get better at? We do not teach that to the Black community. We keep teaching them what's stacked against you, who's not treating you right, who's doing this to you. That's the wrong way to look at it, because I feel like if we want to see the change, we have to be the change first. For example, the way that we're killing each other, I get people are like, oh, don't talk about that when it comes to defunding their police. Really, no one wants to talk about it ever. No one ever wants to talk about it. It's not even when a major crime happens in the city. No one ever wants to talk about it. Okay. And I'm like, this is a serious problem. This is an issue. And yeah, you can say because of the situation we're in, where I'm going to push back and say again, who controls our area? I don't know if you agree with me or disagree, but I 100% feel like local government matters more than national. I believe the decisions that are made at the local level are way more impactful and directly impact us in ways that the national decisions don't. We can sit here and say Republicans sometimes are in office, Democrat. What we can't say is that Republicans have a chance ever to oversee Black communities. It just doesn't happen. Decades and decades of Democratic rule, but yet we keep electing the same party over and over on our city school council, and who are overseeing our crumbling our school boards, our city council, the same people, our mayors are the same people, but we're saying that we want change. And I'm like, if you want change, at the very least, won't you try it out? And you mentioned something earlier. You said, well, someone shouldn't just vote for a different party they don't believe in. And I'm going to push back against that too. From my conversations, and one of the things I was doing, especially before COVID, was I was doing a lot of door knocking. I had a value sheet. It just listed all these different values and things that are representative of each party, but I didn't put the party on it. I would talk to people and I would ask them which one they kind of align with. You would be surprised of how many Black people have conservative values. There are survey after survey after surveys that are done that show that Black Americans are some of the most conservative people in the country.
Socially.
Okay. But even so, in a lot of different ways, and yet a lot of things that Republican Party stand for, they have no idea, because the Republican parties do suck. The Republican Party does suck at getting their message out. The Democrats are much better. They're already in Black America. They control the narrative. When a Republican is running for president, all you got to do is call them racist 1,000 times eventually, and it's going to stick. And then the Republican is not even going to get a chance. Like, the Democrats have it down pat. They already know the talking points. It is like no chance. So the Republican Party has some soul searching to do to change it, but I don't think it's a policy debate. I think it's always an emotional debate. It's an emotional pill. Most of my friends who voted for the Democrats or voted for Joe Biden didn't even like Joe Biden and don't even know a lot of what he stands for. They just felt like he was more sympathetic.
But
that and again, if we're gonna do elections off of emotion, then of course the Democrats are gonna always win because they've mastered that. They've mastered how to control emotions. But the reality is, policy-wise, I do not believe the Democrats are better, and I also believe they have caused a lot of the issues that we are talking about today. They've
well,
caused a lot of them.
well,
So
I think when you say they've caused the issues, I think you're referencing 1994 crime bill. I'm guessing.
I'm referencing even the welfare program and how that's run.
Yeah.
I'm referencing the fact that
I don't believe
even
the
with the Black Lives Matter, even with the Black Lives Matter movement, where exactly is this money going? Why? And the Democrats have attached themselves to it. They've made it seem like they are the party of the Black Lives Matter, but they have no. What do they do to actually show you that Black Lives Matter? What bill have they passed to improve the lives? Black lives to me only matter to some of these Democratic politicians when they're dead. I'm just being real. Like when they're dead and when they can now use it as part of their campaign or their national speech or whatever. But what do they do? To what legislation recently have they passed?
Would you like me to show you some?
Please show me what Barack Obama did for Black Lives Matter. Please show me what Clinton did for Black Lives Matter.
This is shifting goalposts. Well, you asked me to show you what Black Lives Matter did for Black lives, right? Let me explain to you. First of all, we have to understand Black Lives Matter is a misleading term. Black Lives Matter is about police brutality. Thus, I'm going to be discussing police brutality. I'm only going to focus on my home state of Texas. A, to make it easier, and B, because I love Texas, right? So that's the style. Especially Democratic Texas. So let's look at Austin. Let's look at Austin, right? With regards to Austin, defunding the police in Austin has worked. They've defunded the police budget by about 1/3, right? Reallocating funds into social programs that have reinvested into Black communities at record levels. Black communities are now reaching record highs in education standards, income standards, like family standards, like overall happiness. Their HDI, the Human Development Index within Black communities, has risen, right? And this is all from just defunding the police, cutting the police budget 1/3 in Austin, right? Now let's turn to Houston, Texas, my hometown. In Houston, the Houston Police Department, currently the budget is more than all the budgets of every other department of the Houston city combined, right? So what did they do? They decreased the budget a little bit, put in more training, barred headlocks. You can look at what Mayor Turner did for Houston. So many good things in Houston, right? And this is only in Texas, and these are only in the two cities that I know the most about. Beyond this, though, if we look at a federal level, right, Joe Biden's plans to reform the police department are incredible. Joe Biden's plans to crack down on police unions, crack down on false investigations, have a separate Department of Justice to investigate acts of police brutality, right? And then on top of that, like issue national standards for police training. Those are some of the most progressive agendas there. And before, like the arguments brought up about what did Obama do? I don't like Obama. Obama was not a good president on this instance. You said you don't like Trump for some things. I don't like Obama for some things. This is why I don't like Obama, right? Because he didn't do this. But Joe Biden's current policy plans, which he has outlined very clearly, right? And I agree with you, by the way. Some Black people just vote for Biden because he's Biden, right? But with the policy plans, that's where you're looking for. Those are the policies that are going to benefit the Black community. Those are the policies that are going to help us move forward.
Well, I'm glad it's working for you guys in Texas, because I think cities like Minneapolis and a lot of these other areas would beg to disagree with cutting the police funding and how it's affecting them. So, I think that's important, though. One of the things conservatives believe in is that it's states' rights and allowing states and local governments and places to make decisions, because every area is very different. So, I think that actually is making a case. I do not think there needs to be a defund initiative across the country. And let me also tell you what's going to happen if that happens, right? I honestly believe it won't happen, but if it happens, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to start to see more underprivileged people killed, because the richer neighborhoods, the richer zip codes are going to hire their own protection, their own police services, their own whatever. It's going to be HOA thing, whatever. And then you're going to see it not available to the people who need it the most. It's going to create more of a gap between the rich and the poor, and that's a real concern for me. That's actually one of my biggest concerns. People think defunding police means it's going to go. No, some of these rich they're going to have police. They're going to, whether it's private, whatever, they're going to make sure their towns are safe. And then it won't be people like myself and you. We won't have access when we need it, and that is my biggest concern. I don't think it's been thought through thoroughly. Do I think it needs to be training improvements? Absolutely, I do. I think when you have something as sensitive as being a police officer and you have people's lives in your hand, you should always be training. It actually baffled me and it concerned me to see that it wasn't happening nearly as much as it should. I think I was when George Floyd died. It was horrible. I have a daughter, you know what I'm saying, and I looked at her and I'm like, I don't want her to see this. I don't. I mean, these things were heartbreaking to me. I don't want to act like I'm insensitive to these things.
I think it's heartbreaking to any black person to see.
Yeah,
and honestly, this is why, like, this is why, like, I think even though we're both like, again, we're both black, but we're both from different sides of the political spectrum. I think we can both agree, like, no more dead black people.
Yeah, I agree.
At the hands of police, at the hands of anybody, no more dead black people. And our solutions to these differ, and I can understand why, right? But like, I guess I just believe that we just have to address the issue head on. And the issue isn't the welfare system. It isn't black on black crime. It isn't bad apples in the police department. It's systemic and long-stemming cancers upon the system that are making the system work against black people and treat black people as second-class citizens within a country where we built it on our own hands. Like it's
we did build this country. I agree with. In my main point, I 100% agree. We need to improve. I just think that it starts with self-accountability. I think it starts with us looking at what choices we can do differently. I think it starts with us not being a guaranteed, locked-in, shoe-in vote. Even when someone like Joe Biden could, say some really racist things too, but kind of get a pass or not even really get a full 24 news cycle treatment because he has a letter D next to his name. I think we really need to see it for what it is, which is that maybe a lot of people don't have black people's best interests in heart. So we need to be evaluating it from a standpoint of who is going to allow us, who is going to give us the resources so that we can get on our feet and we can defend our own, we can protect ourselves, we can rise up and not depend on anybody. Don't depend on Republicans, don't depend on anyone. I don't think the Democrats are doing that. I think the right is closer. Republicans, I should say, are closer to that standpoint of trying to give them individual freedom and liberty and teach them how to fish, where the Democrats are more so like, we're going to hand you some fish so that you're not completely hungry, but not enough to the point that your family is comfortable. And I think in America, you could be comfortable. I think you can get to a place where you can create generational wealth for your kids and grandkids. I think you can get to a place where you can feel like the dream is yours too. Because again, I know I was a Democrat for much of my life. Everything that you're saying, I felt. I thought Trump was racist when he first won. I was scared when he won. I remember going to work freaked out. I remember going to work and not even wanting to go to work because I was like, we're done. Black America's done. Like, I have felt everything that you're feeling, but the system didn't change. The USA didn't change. Nothing changed. What changed was me. I changed. I changed from what I expected from this country. Okay. And I changed what I expected from myself. And that is why all of a sudden I'm the national director of one of the largest fastest growing nonprofit organizations in the country. Right. I have now met hundreds and thousands of black people across the country who are now open and receptive to different ideas, who are starting to see, like, maybe, you know what, I need to give the other side a chance. I need to at least evaluate the other side. We're not even teaching conservative values. Most people don't even know in Black America what they are, right? So I think Black people owe it to themselves to at least learn. Again, like I said in the beginning, if you still feel like after you have fully educated yourself that you are a liberal, then I commend you. You know why? Because you took the time to fully educate yourself and understand who you are, and not just did it because your mom or your dad or your grandparents, or it's always been the way.
Which is actually something I agree with you on, about like the idea that a lot of people in politics, especially black people, right, like more than any other, like, think we just like there's no we don't vote.
We don't.
And when we do vote, we don't choose to vote on the right policy. Like we choose to just vote like random willy-nilly votes. Like I was talking to somebody on Omegle once who told me, I told all my family to vote, and I was like, that's a great thing, but I didn't vote.
That's a problem. When I went to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. That's why I started HBCU in Maryland. When I was there, there was a forum, and this was during the primary season. Again, at this time, I was still a Democrat, and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama were running against each other, and everybody there was for Obama. I had made up my mind yet. So when they gave me the mic, they were just asking everybody's opinion. I said, I don't know. I'm thinking about Hillary. The looks I got in that room, you would have thought that I said I hated Black people. And that was, to me, one of the first moments where I said, a lot of Black Americans, and I'm not just picking on Black men. I know it's a lot of Americans in general.
Oh yeah, but specifically,
but I think our community need to be the most educated. We have to. A lot of them are voting off of things that are not real, that are not real things, like he's Black, or oh, this person was hanging out with this celebrity and he seems to be cool. They put Kamala Harris on every BET show when she was picked for the vice presidency for Biden. I mean, they had her everywhere. I'm like, I've never seen Kamala Harris on any of these things. But they do that because they know that's going to trigger a lot of Black Americans to say, oh, they're one of us, I'm going to vote for them. Like, that's just not, that's not appropriate. That, to me, is not picking a candidate off of what matters to you and your family. If you're going to vote for Barack Obama, this is what I said when I had the mic. I said, if you're voting for Obama, just be able to tell me why. I'm not a traitor because I'm considering Hillary. I'm educating myself and I'm learning about what she stands for, what he stands for. I'm not just saying he's Black, I'm going to vote for him, like you guys are doing. But somehow I'm the traitor. Somehow I'm the person that's the problem. And it kind of feels that way sometimes as a Black conservative, where, listen, I get that I'm in the minority on this one, of the minority, but I also know that I want people to respect Black conservatives, because many of them, to take the fire that we take, the hatred that we get, you guys are being respectful, but I get called all kinds of names, inappropriate names, all kinds of stuff.
I can
and to put yourself out there to be attacked that way, you must have researched. You had to do something that would have allowed you, that would have made you feel this way, because no one's doing this for fun. At least no one I know, because this is not fun. It would be much easier for me to just go ahead and say I'm a Democrat. I would get less looks, more hugs, high fives. Well, maybe not during COVID, but I would get a lot more support from my family.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you. I feel like, here's my thing, right? I feel like jesting around, like I'm personally I'm Black liberal, but like there's Black communists who like mess around. They're like, you're continuing, because they believe in anti-capitalism. They believe that, which I can agree with to an extent. They believe the idea that Black people can only be truly liberated when we liberate ourselves from capitalist class structures, right? And they'll come to me and they'll be like, capitalist, you can tell where that's going, right? And I feel like the same thing is probably happening to you, but probably to a much larger extent. And I've said this before, like on virtually any social media. If you're a white person doing that, you're just racist. Like, you're trying to hide your racism, but you're just racist. Like, there's no questions about it. And I think, like, if anybody does that, it's just absolutely insane to me.
Yeah, that's who I've actually realized I've done it the most. It's been white people. That's been my biggest concern with some of the white liberals. I always tell my Black liberal friends, I'm like, hey, even if you may be a liberal at heart, but this should still concern you. The fact that the people that are saying that they advocate for you and they stand up for you as a Black person, but then when you're not, doing it the way that they like, all of a sudden you're a problem. You're not really advocating for Black people if you only advocate for them when they agree with you. That's not. If you advocate for Black people, you advocate for Black people. My rights and what me being a Black person in America and how you feel should not change because I'm a conservative. If you genuinely feel like Black people are not getting fair treatment or whatever the case may be, then that should be across the board. My political ideology should not affect how you feel about that. So, I do think that's a concern. I think the political environment is not healthy, and I'm not going to, it's not all the liberals, it's conservatives too. Trust me, I see stuff on my Twitter feed all the time from conservatives. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, no. And if it's not appropriate for us to get into these personal battles. One of the things I didn't really like about President Trump, right? I think sometimes he actually was saying some really good stuff that maybe even liberals could get on board with, but it was the way he would say it, or he would go off on a tangent, or a tweet storm, or whatever, a Twitter storm, and it would just completely destroy whatever good he was trying to say in that message. And so I'm not a fan of that environment. That's not how I was raised. That's not what I believe in. But I think it's worth noting that we do need people to vote off of what truly matters to them and their family, and not because you feel like it's the way or you feel like you have to. And by the way, that's what Brexit is for. I know people associate us a lot with President Trump, and in a lot of ways I can understand why, because our founder is a very big Trump supporter. But one of the things we've done during this last year is we've tried to focus so much on just community work. It is very hard when you have a founder like Candace Owens, who I love her, by the way. She's my boss, obviously, and I'm a fan of her, but I realize that some people can't stand her. And when you have a founder like that who can suck up some media attention, it's tough. It's tough to get past that. But if you really actually look at the chapters, right? Look at our work. All our work is community work. We just adopted families in every state for Thanksgiving who didn't have money to feed their families. We helped them, and then on top of that, after we helped them, we connected them with members who are business owners, so they could possibly get job interviews. We connected them with resume writer services, because not only do we want to help you, we want you to now get on your feet after we help you, right? A lot of the work that we're doing it's not political at all. We're a nonprofit organization. We have liberals in our organization, right? We have conservatives, we have independents, we have libertarians, we have so many different people who are part of our organization. So, I think the political climate needs more of that, because sometimes the left is right, sometimes the right is right. But I think both parties have seen that when unchecked, you can go to the extreme of one way or another. And I think the two-party system does balance it out. But we've got to get back, we've got to get back to working together instead of thinking we're enemies all the time, because we're not.
I think MJ and I definitely agree. And that's why we're bringing on this podcast, differing opinions. The goal of our organization is to promote civil discourse, what's happening right now, and have youth involvement in politics, because we're just about educating young people. So we definitely agree, and we condemn all types of, personal attacks and things that are going on in the political conversation today that have made, just free speech and discourse so toxic. But I want to ask you one more question. We talked about how important local government is, and also what you do and don't like about, the reforms coming from the left. What would be specific reforms that you'd like to see at a local level?
Well, the biggest one is school choice. Like, I've advocated for that so much. I actually, in my early days, like before I was actually part of Brexit officially, I would literally create my own pamphlets. And mind you, I am not a graphic designer or creative designer, so they probably looked horrible when I was handing it to these people, but but they had information on there about school choice and what it really is. And I found there was a lot of misconceptions about school choice. People didn't fully understand it, but I really think that's needed, because education to me is the foundation of the type of adult that you become. I literally had to move. I moved out of an area. I lived in a predominantly Black area. I moved because I didn't want my daughter to go to the schools around there. That's horrible, that I had to even do that. And the area I live in now is predominantly white, because this is where I found the decent schools. This is where the school, and that's horrible. A lot of Black families, like he mentioned earlier, they don't have the resources to be able to even do that.
Yep.
So to me, I think we start with school choice. We got to start educating our kids better. We got to start giving parents the option to be able to choose a different school. Some parents have told me, look, I will do homeschooling, or I know people who can homeschool, but I don't have the money. I don't have the funds. I can't afford that. I would do private school. Can't afford that. The private school down the street, my neighborhood is rough, but the private school is actually pretty good, but I can't afford it. That's a problem to me. Like, they should be able to have access to that, because we've got to better educate our kids. I'm not going to get too heavy into this topic because I know we could have a whole nother show on it because most liberals do believe in abortion, but or at least the right to choose. But I think that's killing. I think that's killing our community. I think when you see how it started, what the intention was, I think we make it sound so pretty with the whole pro-choice thing, but in reality, I think it's hurting our community. I really do. I think the amount of Black babies that are getting aborted, it saddens me. And we work so hard. They just built a new one in Charlotte, like here in Charlotte. I'm like, why are we building more abortion clinics? I mean, you know where this money could be going right now. Like, that's a problem for me. And at the very least, taxpayer dollars shouldn't be going towards it. I know Planned Parenthood and places like that say, oh, we do more than just abortion. Well, if you're going to do abortion, then you're still using taxpayer dollars for it in some way, shape, or form. I think if you're going to make a support, if you're going to do it, don't make the entire country support it, because there are a lot of people who don't agree with that, who don't want their money going towards those things. But again, I think it's an attack on the Black community that has been spiced up to make it seem like we're empowered and it's some type of choice. And I don't think that's the case at all. So those are the main two, if I had to start there. I am a big fan of outsiders, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. I think we need to get some use in some of these spots. The whole career politician thing or family line thing or whatever we got going on both sides of the aisle is a problem. I don't like it. I think it's why you're not seeing change fast enough sometimes. We need to do a better job with term limits in Congress as well. I mean, I can go on, y'all. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop. But there's a lot of issues that I think that
there's a lot wrong and a lot. I think me and you are both like, how do we say this? Me and you are both, we have the same issues with different solutions. And I think that's what this podcast is all about. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for hanging out with us. And thank you for like having a discussion that turned into a little bit of a debate at the end. It was fun, though.
Yeah,
thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you.
I had no idea what I was fully walking into, but I'm very I'm glad you guys had me on. I
didn't expect it to become a debate either. So.
It was a healthy one, though. I think we showed
it was a very healthy one. So if you'd like to set up another debate or another like discussion or forum, just let us know. Everybody in chat, thank Mr. Wilson for coming on, and this is a Verbum podcast and a Youth in Politics podcast, and I've had a great time, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.